Hello, everyone. I'm Jan Rusher-Doms. I'm the Vice President of U.S. Development with VaynerMedia. We are an ecosystem of brands for women by women, connecting women to each other and to the companies, causes, and organizations that champion equity for women professionally and personally. You are watching our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion show. Please make sure to join our YouTube channel for all of our upcoming programs, content, and shows. Also visit our website at joinmedia.com to learn more about how you too can become a member of how together we are revolutionizing how professional women connect, engage, and do business together. I'm so thrilled and honored to be hosting this today. We have a very special conversation in store for you. I'd like to welcome Claude Silver to the show. Hi, Claude. Welcome.
It's great to be here. Hi, Jan.
Hi. Claude is the Chief Heart Officer at VaynerMedia and former head of digital and strategy at Publicis London. Claude, welcome. This is so exciting.
It's been a long time in the making, so
it has been.
Super stoked.
So I'm just going to jump right into the deep end here. You use the L word a lot in your communications, love. Talk to us a bit about what does that mean in the context of the work that you do.
I've never had that. I've never had that question. So So I love the question. Love is a word that we all have a relationship with and we all have an attachment with. And for the most part, it's very universal, which means like amor, I like you, I feel something for you, like this is good. And I really believe in bringing love into leadership and thus into organizations. I think that we can all do with more tenderness, more kindness, more compassion. And ultimately, we want to make people feel good. And I think love is, to be very cliche, love is the drug that does that.
It's so interesting. And I absolutely agree 2000%. And you also say that, you work for 800 human beings. And that's such a different way to approach the human capital side of an organizational culture. Talk to us a bit about what does it really mean to be working right now in this period of time in particular? What does it mean to be working for 800 human beings?
Yeah, well, it always means that I'm on call, that I am there for them. I am literally here to either help them move the puck down the ice, to connect them with other people, to hold space and whatever comes up. And so, I used to do that in person or with groups of people in conference rooms. And now I'm doing it either one-on-one or I'm seeing everyone in the same size little box. And we're having, really interesting jam sessions. So right now, obviously, DE&I is what we're talking about. And what we're always talking about, we're talking about it more so now in terms of Black Lives Matter. Being, COVID and talking to people about is there such a thing as balance anymore? Probably not. How do you take micro moments for yourself? How do you step away? Zoom fatigue, all of those things. So, today my conversations with our folks have ranged from microaggressions to interviews that we want to do, to interview training, to the unconscious bias training we're doing tomorrow, to how can we implement Donut on Slack to get more people interacting. I mean, and in the working for is very much, I am an empathetic servant leader, and I believe my job is to do just that. I am at your service.
Claude, you talk a lot about culture as texture. And I would imagine that means that, organizations are organisms that aren't one-dimensional or two-dimensional, but they're actually, made up of human beings, made up of people with, wants, needs, and desires. But yet we just talked about how you're holding space for people in the flat world now. How has that shifted in the sense of how is your firm, how is your agency thinking about culture? And what are some things that you're doing to add more richness to that, given the fact that it's screen to screen?
Yeah, a wonderful conversation, because I do talk about it as texture, that culture is alive, but it is like the wind. You either feel it or you don't. And sometimes I prefer not to feel it because that means things are really copacetic. And sometimes on a bad windy day and I get dust in my lenses, that can be a really upsetting culture, and one that's based on fear. So it is really a texture for me. the way that I can get more of the vibe and the way that I believe all of us can start to feel each other a little bit more is by spending time with one another. So it's no different than being in person, other than you have to make an extra effort. I can't see anything above your shoulders. I don't know what you're doing with your hands. I don't know if a person is nervous. I don't, I know that, we as leaders and all of us, we're being invited into someone else's space, and what an honor that is, and how vulnerable that can also be for a person. So how do you create that wonderful vibe, or at least a vibe that says you are not in danger? I am here. I come in peace. You can lower your cortisol levels. We're just going to have a conversation like we normally do in that conference room. So it is literally spending time with people. I do these things called 12 by 12s. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just 12 o'clock in the day. And I have 12 random people come on. So whoever pops on, I get to see. And it's very lighthearted. Hi, how are you doing? What's going on? Where are you? And let's do an icebreaker. It's no more than 20 minutes. And it's a way to, again, I mentioned the micro moments earlier, but it is a way to connect. And this is people in different offices, in different cities, in the same office, in different departments. So making sure that we are continuing to take that thread and weaving together this quilt is my priority.
Do you think that also during this period of time too, where, I'm inviting you into my home, you're inviting me into yours, and I'm enabling, employers and companies to also have a glimpse into my world as well, right? As are all of your employees as well. And are there moments in time that can serve as a great equalizer in the sense of, you're not necessarily riding an elevator to the C-suite floor. Now, at this moment in time, you could be all together in a Zoom room, and now this is your calling card, right? In what ways has that propelled how your agency thinks about inclusion? And then what are some of the roadblocks to that?
Well, I'll start with the roadblocks, and then I'll go into more of the opportunity, I think. The roadblocks, again, I think, are when we are not keeping our bias in check, which is a lot, right? It's unconscious. So we have to get very conscious and mindful about our bias. And so what am I thinking about the art on your wall? Maybe you don't throw, gay when you're in the office, LGBTQ, but I can see that you have rainbow flags everywhere, or whatever that is. I have no idea that you have 2 cats and a dog that are all over you at all times. Or, you might even hear my 21-month-old in a second when she wakes up. The things that we need to be mindful of always are like, how am I interacting and entering into someone's space, period. And it is different when it's not live. Now, the wonderful opportunity is we are all interacting with Gary, our CEO, and he has a baseball hat on and hasn't shaved in a year, it looks like. And we're him in his natural habitat, just like you're getting to see me in my natural habitat, or Susie, or Johnny, or, Bob, or, or Bill. And so there's something very cool about that too. Again, if we enter in that with that mindfulness, but also with that light touch. And so you're like, you have that baseball hat on today. Or I had no idea you had a dog. How cool. Here's my dog. That kind of stuff. So again, it all comes down to being as conscious as we possibly can. And what that really means to me is making sure that we are empathetic and remembering that you and I are very much the same, even though we're different. We have very much the same types of hopes, dreams, wants, fears. We're humans. So that neutralizes things. And, that's something that I do on repeat.
I think it's interesting as well in this moment in time, we're all experiencing similar things, but yet we're experiencing them in very different ways. Even when it comes to a geographical location, right? Like we know that if you right now live in New York State, that, you saw it hit hard early on, and now we're settling down a bit. Whereas other states are now seeing and are peaking for themselves. And so I'm wondering, given the sense that you have employees all over the country, what does that mean right now in the sense of holding space, but then also showing empathy and understanding that not everyone's going to be experiencing this at the same moment in time. And the needs just on a basic, when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just at that basic level, could be still so shaken. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean then for the longer term vision of the direction you want your company to take?
Right. So you're talking about psychological safety, really, mm-hmm. and the crux of everything that we do and everything I believe leaders need to keep in mind. And you're right. When this came, we talked about this before we went live. I mean, this started in early March, and who knew that, central of the United States or the Southwest wasn't going to see it until July. No one knew that. And so it wasn't necessarily what was good for the goose was good for the gander, because it was very staggered, and New York was a real hotbed and very scary for all of us that were here. And now what we need to do is keep in mind that here we are in New York, where a bulk of our people are in the tri-state area. We are still very much concerned with our brothers and sisters that are in Europe, that are in Singapore, and certainly that are in LA. Where LA, we thought we would be opening that office on July 6th. And nope, we had to scale that back. So it really comes down to the fact that we have to put people's health and wellness and psychological safety front and center. And that is what I believe we've always done. But boy, oh boy, now that I see how far we went, I feel like, God, we did a great job, but like, wow, now we have the opportunity to do an exceptionally great job, knowing what we know and knowing that we need to really account for that, that safety and that sense of belonging, no matter where our folks are, and they are scattered now.
How do you think the inclusion of the health and wellness factor, physical, emotional, spiritual health, will be a part of how you think about everything going forward, from recruiting and hiring and onboarding to employee development and fulfillment and performance assessment and all those different things that you normally think of are pretty routine in the sense of just the totality of the employee experience? How will that change now because of what we're all experiencing?
The real answer is it's going to have a massive change and evolution, because it needs to. If we want to, first of all, if we just want to be human, we need to take that into account, that this has shaken, this COVID, Black Lives Matter movement, George Floyd, has shaken people to their roots. And the emotion that has come out of everything that we've all been experiencing, especially our people that are our communities that are Black and brown, have hit such nerves and such raw emotion that there will never be a day that we cannot attend to that we cannot, have seriously 2020 vision with that now. And so what we have done up until this minute right now is we've brought in mindfulness meditation. We've brought in health and wellness coaches. We've brought in yoga for those people that want to use them. We've brought in coaching. And coaching is up to you, whatever you want to talk to the person about. In the UK, we brought in a company called Sanctus that only deals with mental health and mental wellness. So I am, really open for business when it comes to anything more we can do, because it is everything. And even I imagine as we start to interview people and do recruiting, first of all, the areas that we can recruit at are going to be really expansive now, because our needs are different. And I also imagine that these are going to be questions we get. How are you going to take care of me?
Do you think that this is also a moment in time where there could be a fundamental shift between the I culture toward a we culture? And I ask that, but yet also kind of, laugh when I say that, because, when I think about the we versus the I and the I versus we also right now are living in a moment in time here in the United States that's incredibly polarized, from, basic, do I wear a mask or do I not wear a mask, or do I social distance or do I not social distance? And that's become a very heated political conversation in this country. And so, I'm wondering, your perspective of, it's, how do you move from that I culture to the we culture when just we as the United States of America aren't necessarily synced up on that?
So the reason I smiled so big is that I believe we have a we, not I culture. I spout it from the mountaintops. I believe that it is, we walk the walk, not just talk the talk inside of our hallways. So that's why I was smiling, because that's what I say. The culture that is built on psychological safety, belonging, and bravery, which lends itself then to collaboration and connection and everything else that strong teams need and are rooted in. And what we're living through now has brought a different element of the personal, right? So what is it like now to go into your CVS and you can't see anyone smile? I mean, it's just devastating, right? And I think for a lot of us, myself included, there is this like little level of, I don't know if it's depression or despondence or what, when you just like, oh, wow, yeah, this is how it's going to be. And so I think we need to, as an organization, we need to remind ourselves that, hey, there's a collective going on here, a real collective going on. And when Black Lives Matter movement struck up again within our walls, like that is really, I believe, when we really started paying attention in a very different way, because as much as we were we, not I, and as an empathetic culture, so many of us were missing the mark because we weren't educated, because we hadn't looked at our own racism, because we just didn't know the depths. We didn't know the depths, or we had turned a blind eye. So what we've done inside of our organization within 7 weeks, I mean, since a couple weeks before Juneteenth, is we've made massive commitments, massive shifts, and we're in action in terms of how are we taking care of our Black and Brown communities now.
Do you think that this is also a moment in time where, when you just look visually at who took to the streets and who protested and who supported Black Lives Matter and just social justice issues just across the board, that that those who were standing up also were very diverse themselves? And in this moment in time of this awakening that's happening, I think just within our country, but then also to see the global support in other cities around the world too, in the sense of them also taking to the streets and protesting. Is there, something from your perspective that you think is unique about this moment in time? Is it just the perfect storm of the pandemic, plus, all of the things that were already kind of in motion leading up to this, plus the political instability of what's happening in the US, plus the pandemic, plus Black Lives Matter? What is different about this moment in time, and what do you really hope will stay true to all of us to ensure that it's not another shiny penny thing that we'll forget about?
That's such a good and deep, deep question. And so thank you for that. What I will say is, I believe what we have gone through and what we're going through has really, really removed the curtain on some deep pain. Deep, 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 deep pain of our fellow citizens, our brothers and our sisters around the world. And if I'm speaking really in America, I think some of the shame, the pain, the ignorance, the blindness that myself I've had, and really looking at the fact that if I truly believe that there's not much of a difference between you and me, am I really taking into account what you've gone through? So at the end of the day, my skin is white. I'm gay, but my skin's white. So I have known of some type of issues in a very different way, but I will never actually know what it is like to be a person of color, ever. And so while I believe my empathy, and I believe our empathy can go as wide and far as the Grand Canyon, we need to educate ourselves, because there's that missing piece that I don't know if we'll ever get to. And I sometimes equate it to being like a passenger in the car. Like I can ride alongside you. I'm not going to be able to actually drive that car with you. When I think about empathy, and actually when I think about the, where we are right this minute, this pivotal minute. So it's, it's, everything is very personal, but everything is very collective right at the same time. It's just like this confluence all the time of the waves and the waves and the waves meeting one another. And so we need to be awake.
Mhm. I think there's also, and thank you for what you just said, because it reminds me also just of the intersectionality of all social justice issues, right? So no matter what marginalized group that you may identify with personally, um, there's always this motion between how you're perceived and experienced by others, right? And that's largely based upon the color of your skin, right? Not necessarily any other preference or orientation or identification, but it's really truly like what you see at that first impression that we make judgments about. And I'm wondering, how will unconscious bias training just as a discipline change within companies? And what do you think will change for your agency, but then also for other companies who may not be as highly evolved in the sense of how they think about human beings within the workplace? What could they learn about this moment in time too, as they think through, maybe is now finally for the first time an opportunity for, unconscious bias training in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. Perfect timing, because I rolled it out last week we're starting with our leaders. So our C-suite and our executive leadership and SVPs on up. Why? Because that was the group A, culture does stem from the top. Mm-hmm. B, that was the group that was coming to me mostly and saying, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to be there. Someone was crying. This person didn't want to be on camera. Of course that's okay that they take a day off. Whatever. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And so it struck me that, okay, we need to go, it's systemic, and we need to go right to that root immediately. And so we rolled out, it was a 3-hour Zoom call. We've got another one tomorrow with 50 people. And by the way, Singapore, London, everywhere. And the difference about this training, not only do I believe that the person that is doing the training is an academic and a lawyer and a person of color and just knows her stuff. It's not, it's interactive. I mean, it's being vulnerable. This moment requires us to be vulnerable, all of us, and to be able to raise our hand and say, I actually don't know what that means, or why is intent different than impact? Like, I don't really understand. Or, if you look at it in the context of creative advertising or an advertising company, like, I don't really think that ad was that far. Like, having those conversations. What companies have done, and I've been at these companies, is in the past, you've watched a video. And if you're lucky, it's only 20 minutes long and you can do something else and press, yes, I got it, the next video. Yeah, you check yourself a bit. But there's something else, to be held accountable by your peers. We do these breakout sessions in this training and you chat about it. So it does require us being awake, the vulnerability of all of us, the courage of all of us. And again, like the appetite to be educated, the appetite to be wrong, and to not take it as shameful or as bad, but as I want to learn, I have to learn. So there's so much that's going to happen.
There is so much. Do you think it's also in this moment in time of just understanding that we also need to dismantle the myth of meritocracy? And women struggle with this a lot. Like, we have a perception that if we work hard, put our head down, work, we'll be seen, we'll be acknowledged, we'll be appreciated, and then rewarded and promoted. But we know that, this country isn't a meritocracy, gender aside. We just know that it's not, right? But I think sometimes we have a tendency to forget that, or a tendency to really think that, the United States of America is this great land of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity here, but there's more opportunity for people that have a certain degree of privilege than others, right? Let's talk about that a bit, like in this moment in time of really dismantling and disrupting and pivoting and, all these things that are really getting shaken to their core. Is this also a moment in time where maybe the myth of meritocracy is shaken as well?
I think it has to be. I think if we all agree that we are at a pivotal moment in the history of our life, for certainly us, a Gen Xer like myself, but even the millennials and even my nieces, 14 and 16, Gen Z, like, this is the moment. And this is the moment to act and to commit to doing better, but it's also the moment to speak up. And I do think that there are ways to speak up where you are heard, and I think there are other ways to speak up where you're not heard, where you are cast aside. So what is going to be the best way for us to get our messages across? I mean, I think the Female Quotient, which is a company run by Shelley Zalis, does a phenomenal job at shaking some stuff up, if you know what I'm talking about. And we need them, and we need more voices like that. The fact that, females are still paid, almost 20 cents less than males, and we're in 2021 almost, is like, really, that's just strange. That's just odd, So we have, I think we all need to commit to being a part of this revolution and this evolution. We can't all do it alone, and we can't take on everything at the same time. So yes, it is a marathon, not a sprint. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is going back to education. Like, we do need to educate everyone on microaggressions. Let's start there, for an example. There's unconscious bias, but then let's talk about like why it is improper why you do need to have your eyes open when you talk about privilege and socioeconomic privilege. And again, going back to seeing how you live behind your Zoom camera there, or your Facebook Live or whatever it is. These are the things that I think we need to, almost like squirrels, we need to gather all of our nuts, and then we need to figure out, well, which ones are we going to go after? What are we going to do? And go to town. And a lot of that, I think, is going to, we have to vote. We have to get to the polls if we're going to change anything, right? In a massive way. We have to speak up to our CEOs or the board. And the wonderful thing about this organization is that, here you are, banding together females that want to make change, that are bright and brilliant and raising their hands and networking together and in community, because community is where it happens. That's where it happens. So that's the start. And then let's start chipping away.
I agree with you 2000%. And I think that this is really about, a moment in time where, people really show up with a greater degree of empathy, a greater degree of understanding, and a greater degree of curiosity. Because I think that, you alluded to this, that we often think about the world, experiencing the world through our own lens, through our own filter, but understanding that's not the experience of others. I'm wondering too that, for those of us who are in very diverse circles where there may not always be agreement on certain issues that you and I would consider to be social justice issues around equality and inclusion and human rights. I think that there's a tendency sometimes just to shrug it off, or just to walk away from the conversation, or walk away from the comment, or to play nice, particularly for women, as we have that tendency to do that. And I'm wondering, if you have advice for ways in which we can be more persuasive, be more present, lean in more to some of those conversations, particularly where we do have the opportunity to stand up for what's right and not just walk away from a conversation.
So for me, everything comes back to accountability and responsibility. Before I feel like I can enter into one of those conversations, or I feel that I am ready, I need to make sure that I'm checking myself and doing enough jumping jacks to get my confidence up, right? And let's not kid ourselves. I do that before I walk on for a keynote. But to have, when you're having those conversations that not necessarily are going to be hard conversations, but they might be challenging conversations in terms of there might be a debate. Like so coaching is a phenomenal way to get your mojo rising. Working with your accountability buddies and in community and role playing, those types of things are extremely important. And I do them because I don't sit there every single day, A, having the answer, and B, knowing how to use my voice in every single moment. I just don't. I don't know who does. And if there are people out there that do, that's fantastic. God bless. But we're human at the end of the day. And we all have our own limiting beliefs, and we all have our own, little Claude and big Claude. And so what can I do to know that, A, I need to be big Claude? How do I get big Claude driving the bus? Who can help me get big Claude driving the bus? And then, of course, passing that on. of course, sharing that and making sure that everyone knows how to do that. And not for the sake of the fight. I don't believe in, I'm not a fighter. I'm a lover, not a fighter. But for the sake of what I believe is right for humans. Just like going back to the original question, why do I use the word love? Mm-hmm. I believe that love is a human right. I do. And I also believe that love is my spirituality, and I will stand by that every single day of my life. So it's for me, it's all the same. This is all done from love, not from fear and not wanting to be right, because God knows we're all looking for right.
I love what you just said. Because it really, it really speaks to the human condition, and it really speaks to, I think, the mind and the heart's capacity for change and for evolving and for, constantly being in that state of curiosity and seeking, something greater, right? And I think that that's something that I think that many of us are taking this moment in time to do a little bit of a step back and do some inner reflection, and to just really think through, like, who do we really want to become when we grow up, right? And that's, I think, it's been a moment in time that I know, in speaking to, hundreds of women in the Mayshad ecosystem, it's been very eye-opening to hear exactly, how people are coming out on the other side of those conversations. And also thinking about, the ways in which, I think that people communicate with each other, but then also the way in which brands communicate with people too. And are you seeing in your industry seismic shifts in how that happens? And are brands now able to successfully go beyond the very visually stunning support for Black Lives Matter and really be a part of implementing some sort of change above and beyond just kind of the, the shout outs and the visual signs of support?
So I can answer that question in a very recent conversation I had as in yesterday with a very major Fortune 10 brand who has a commitment that they've made with the AMA, which is the Association of Marketing and Advertising. And they have not only made a pledge, they've made an enormous financial pledge that they would change all of their advertising by 2022, which is enormous. And how they're doing that is they met with all of us, the agency partners, because we're creating for them, and wanted to know from soup to nuts, what are our numbers? What are our ratios? What are our plans internally? What are we doing? What are we saying internally? What are we doing externally? Where's our transparency? Those types of things. So that is definitely happening. And I think we're going to see brand loyalty either rise or shift seismically. I think we're already hearing about that, even as we go into this election, we're seeing where money goes, and we're making the choices, our own personal choices, based on what our beliefs are. So, right when COVID hit, I will say, you immediately saw brands starting to change their messaging. If you were selling alcohol, you no longer wanted to show TV spots going into a bar because we're not going into bars. So that's just on a very minor scale. Now the inclusivity, and it's not only what you see on camera, it's who's working behind the camera. Who are your vendors, your suppliers? That is essential because it takes a village to make an ad. So it's a really wild time, and it's an amazing time to be alive. And that's the dealio right there. And there's evolution happening here. I feel like, I'm a person that thinks in song lyrics, and all of a sudden I just got Tracy Chapman in my mind.
That's great. So I'm going to switch gears just for a second and talk to a piece you wrote in Medium a little while ago, right before a big birthday celebration of yours. And you listed 49 things that life has taught you. And I read through this list, and there are quite a few that really made me stop and think. So I'm going to share what those are, and then you respond to them and tell me what was, and given the fact that you just wrote this a couple of days ago, what's shifted for you in your mind since then.
Sure.
All right. It's okay to be a late bloomer.
Got to be one of my favorites, and it took me almost 4+ decades to accept that fact. You want me to share about that, or
Yeah. Tell us about that.
I mean, okay, for everything from I graduated with my BA when I was 28. I mean, I took many years off in my 20s to just get it together, to study myself. I think in terms of relationships and when I've finally landed in a permanent relationship, it took me a while. I'm 51 years old and I have a 21-month-year-old. I started in this world of marketing later. I did a lot of different things. I had a surfing and outdoor adventure company. I ran ropes courses. I worked at a grocery store. So I found my career and I knew what my calling was. I found my career and my path much later. I mean, look, I am comparing myself to others around me. All my friends have kids that are going into their first year of college, which is just hilarious. Sometimes I'm like, oh, what's going on here? So there's so many ways that I feel as though for me, I either came to lessons later in life or I had to relearn them 50,000 times before I finally could make that transformation that I wanted to, or that evolution, or arrive.
You said that you knew early on what your calling was.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. How did that evolve?
So at a very young age, around 5, I really knew that I knew I was intuitive. I didn't know what that meant. I just knew I could really feel other people. So that was the first thing. And my parents are very generous spirited people. And my Nana, who I write quite a bit about, we called each other Heart, was the most generous person I had ever met in my life. And she did such an enormous job at emotionally raising me along with my parents. And they're all very generous, giving people. They are all service-oriented people. My mom was a teacher, now a psychotherapist. My grandmother died at 101, but volunteered at the hospital until she was 100. And she used an answering machine, certainly not a cell phone, but her answering machine message for, a 90-plus-year-old woman, a 100-year-old woman was, beep, would you do me a favor and have a peaceful day? That was her answering machine.
I love that. That's amazing.
It's in my DNA. There was no shying away from it. And also really, I think, because I picked up on people, I could pick up on emotions. And I knew that while I felt very alone a lot in terms of how emotional and sensitive I was, I knew that other people were too. It was just a vision.
So this is a great segue, Claude, into the next one that I really resonated with. Never let someone steal your sunshine.
Wow. I don't know about you. Been in a lot of relationships where I think who I was might have been too bright for people based on wherever they were in their life, or just normal envy. And I, being a natural born caretaker, I have to really watch that I don't give it away, because not only do I need it, my family needs it, the world needs it. And that's something I can embrace now. I don't need to be on the front of the stage. That's different. Just who I am.
It's interesting to hear you saying that, because watching the show today, we have many female corporate executives, business owners, entrepreneurs, and many of us have had conversations around, in this moment in time now where life and work is really literally under one roof, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, that's often very hard for women who, no matter if you have children or not, no matter if you're with a significant other or married or coupled or not, that there's still an incredible amount of responsibility that women are taking on themselves right now in this moment in time to really kind of figure everything out, because that's what we do naturally. We like to figure things out, right? What advice do you have for women right now, for professional women who may be grappling with some of these things just around identity, loss of identity, what happens next if you've been furloughed or laid off, or just using this time and you realize, wow, I really do want to be doing truly something very different?
Yeah. So I think the thing to do is to listen to yourself. That is the first thing, because we all know what that voice is like. We have all heard it, male, female, it doesn't matter, but we all know what that voice is like. And we all know what happens when we don't listen to that voice. We're the ones that pay for it. And so, take heed. That's the first thing I would say for sure. And I really believe in support. whether or not it's accountability partners, whether or not it's coaching, whether or not it's community. I believe in sharing, not keeping things in. Certainly don't keep secrets, because, you know, that saying, we're only as sick as our secrets. And like, life is too short. There's too much for us to do right now. And this is a time, I think, if you have been furloughed or laid off, this is a time for reinvention. That is not to say that, of course, you need to put food on the table. I get that, for sure. And there are people hiring. So that's the great thing. But this is a wonderful time for you to listen to what you've been saying, what that voice has been saying for years and years and years. And, you know, I am one of those people that put that voice away for a long time until I finally was like, no more. We got to do this.
You know, you also talk about spotting your limiting beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
For so many women and men too, our network is women, but I'm sure that men grapple with this as well, is that sometimes it's hard to identify your limiting beliefs when you're in it. It's easier to see it when you're out of it, but actually when you're in it, that's really hard to identify.
Yeah.
How do you do that, number one? And then what action steps do you actually then implement for yourself to try to get above and beyond it?
Yeah. So I have the trick. So we all know when we're chickening out. When we're chickening out, that's because we're afraid of our limiting beliefs have gotten loud. We're chickening out. They're going to say no. He's going to say no. I'm not going to get that raise. Whatever it is, I'm not going to be able to take a night off and you know, watch TV or whatever it is. We all know what it's like to chicken out. To me, that is the epitome of a limiting belief rearing its head. Spot it. Write it down. Keep a journal every time you go into please mode. I need to please people mode. You know, that's what I would do. Like, yeah, we have to hold ourselves accountable, myself included. I mean, there's so many things that we need to be working on, right? And I think in this moment where everything is merged and there is no separation, it can be hard to get oxygen. It really can. Mm-hmm. So finding those moments, and when it has to be more than the time it takes to take a shower. You have to find a half an hour once a week, twice a week to just journal, write that stuff down, you know, or put it in a post. But when you chicken out, that's because they are loud.
Chickens are loud for sure. That's great advice.
Yeah, I would also I'd call them the brat too. Like when you're like, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, why aren't you going to do that? Most of the time, you're not going to do that because you're chicken. So your front is like, nope, not gonna do it. But you're really like, I can't do that.
Here's one of my other favorites from your list of 49. You am I and I am you. We are all the same, that there is no judgment. We alluded to this earlier in our conversation, but wanted to come back around to it too, because I think that statement, those three statements are also very powerful together, in the sense of particularly where we are right now too.
Yeah. We talked about this, and I do believe that when we tap into what's going on in human beings and in the lives of our brothers and sisters, I do really believe that we are all or have all felt the same emotions. Again, Black Lives Matter is a bit different because of the difference of skin. However, I know that we all know what it's like to feel pain and pleasure and shame and joy and fear and excitement and enthusiasm. I know that we know what it's like when we hang our head and we feel like there's no one there and we feel hopeless or helpless. And it is the human condition that we are not that far off from one another. And so why don't we link arms more? Just link arms. Walk across the bridge together rather than expecting someone to come towards us. You know, and that takes putting your ego aside, that takes being the bigger person, not because you want a badge or medal of honor, because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. That's what I mean.
Thank you, Claude. That's amazing advice. I want to talk a bit about the concept of leadership and understanding that, our needs as human beings, as employees, as team members, as women, as really diverse people is ebbing and flowing and changing, evolving. What will leaders need to keep in mind as they think about, everything from building and creating new teams and new opportunities and new synergies and new collaborations and, all those other things that go on just at a day-to-day level in the sense of how one leads?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind is humanity. So that goes again back to, I know what my needs are when I walk into a workplace, and I can't imagine my needs are very different than your needs. I need to feel safe. I want to feel that I belong and that I matter, and also that you're going to grow and develop me. So those things are common denominators and table stakes. But I do think that we need to have leaders that are more willing to check themselves and to listen, to not lead from an ivory tower, to build consensus, to come from it as a we, not I. And most importantly, and I think this is something that we can all do better on, trust first. Trust. We it's like we're the judge and the juror, and then we're waiting either to trust them, or we're waiting for them to, oh yeah, I knew that was a bad hire. Like, just trust. You hired them. They're in the building. So, but what that lends itself to is having almost that non-judgment zone, and that takes a lot of leadership, and I think it takes a lot of just self-awareness of knowing, like, I don't have all the answers. You might have a better answer for me. I'm extremely moldable, and I'm here for you. And so that's the humanity part, being here for you. And you used a word twice a couple minutes ago that is extremely important, which is curiosity. Be curious. Like, be curious. What is someone else's experience of X, Y, and Z? Because we might not know.
It's interesting because we also now have 4 or 5 generations in the workplace, sometimes all together under the same corporate roof. Let's go through in our last couple of minutes together your advice for each generation. Yeah. So we'll start with the baby boomers and work our way down. Advice to baby boomers in the workplace today.
Right. I love our in the workplace, and in so many ways they really know more than us. I mean, they've been around, they've been through punching in and punching out and having to dress up and go to work, all of that stuff. I think their patience to some extent wears thin, because the needs of our younger folk are loud, and they're only going to get louder. Mental health is a topic that if you don't want to hear about, you might need to find a different job and not in an office space. So I think, the Gen Xers, I find us, and of course I love us, to be extremely, extremely creative. And I think that we have a risk of burning out because we are taking care of and have been helicopter parents and doing a lot of caretaking and, to some extent, waiting. Even though we were the slacker generation, we finally got around to, we've been, I think this was the first wave of entrepreneurialism, the first wave, you know what I'm saying? And then we've got our millennials, our wonderful millennials, that sweet millennials that, that's a huge range of people. And it's so different. When I went to work, when I was much younger and less experienced, I mean, I had needs and I wanted feedback and I wanted to grow and develop. I just didn't know I could ask. I mean, certainly no one asked me. And so we know what the emotional needs are of everyone, by the way. But the millennials are really telling us, I want to feel proud. Make me proud. Give me growth. Give me development. At bats. Take care of my mental health. Help me. And I really feel like this all the time. In Invisible Ink, they have, help me grow. Tell me I matter and help me grow. And those are, by the way, it's just human needs, but they're loud about it. They keep me young. It's a good thing I have a young daughter now. And then then we've got Gen Z that's going to shake it up. I mean, we saw it with Parkland, and now we're seeing it more and more with BLM, and they are here, and they are proud, and they are loud, and they're smart, super smart.
Super smart. Yes. Yeah. Claude, thank you so much for your insights and your wisdom and just for being here with us this afternoon. We'd love to invite you back for an updated conversation as we move into this new world together. Ladies and gentlemen, Claude Silver, the Chief Heart Officer at VaynerMedia. I'm Jan Marshadams, the Vice President of U.S. Development with Join Mayshad. Please make sure to stay tuned, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check us out at joinmayshad.com and learn more about how you can become a member and join us in this exciting moment in time as we revolutionize how professional women network, connect, and engage and do business together.